There comes a time in your life when you have to wake up and realize not everyone around you is built to carry what's breaking you. You've been bleeding in front of people who only came to watch you fall. You keep spilling your soul into cups that were never meant to hold your truth. Stop telling people your problems. Stop laying your wounds on altars that don't lead to healing. Stop waiting for people to feel what you're going through. Because truth be told, most don't care. And the few who do, they can't fix it. People may nod their heads. They may give you a quick prayer or a soft word. But deep inside, they're carrying their own burdens, fighting their own storms, barely holding themselves together. You keep expecting rescue from people still trapped themselves. God isn't ignoring you. He's drawing you into isolation to develop something inside of you that the world cannot give you. You don't need an audience to recover. You don't need applause to heal. You need discipline. You need stillness. You need divine instruction. You see, when God is about to elevate you, he'll often subtract people from your life. You think it's rejection, but it's redirection. You think you're being abandoned, but you're actually being protected. Protected from shallow comfort, from fake support. People who tolerate your pain but can't transform it. Stop broadcasting your pain to people who only tune in when it entertains them. Start bringing your pain to the one who can exchange it for purpose. Your next level demands privacy, discipline, and maturity. That means learning to suffer in silence, to rise without applause, and to grow without an audience. There is a sobering truth that many of us come to realize too late in life, and that is most people are not equipped to carry the weight of your pain. They might smile at you. They might say, "I'm here if you need anything." But when the night is long, the tears are unexplainable. Weight in your chest feels like it might crush you. Where are they? Often nowhere to be found. Not because they are evil or cruel, because they wish you harm, but simply because they were never meant to be your healer. They were never designed to understand the depth of what you carry. It's not that people are always unkind. It's that pain is heavy, and unless someone has walked a road even remotely similar to yours, they will look at your wounds and not know what to do. Your heartbreak confuses them. Your trauma silences them. Your grief intimidates them. You speak from a place of deep inner struggle, and they respond with casual and shallow suggestions, not because they don't care at all, but because your depth overwhelms their capacity. That's why many walk away. That's why your calls go answered when you're at your lowest. That's why they stop inviting you. Stop asking how you are. Quickly change the subject when you open your heart. It's not always personal. It's often a reflection of their limits, not your unworthiness. The human heart has a limited capacity. Most people are already weighed down by their own battles, their own unanswered prayers, their own silent wars. They don't have the emotional bandwidth to step into yours. They don't know what to say when you tell them you cry yourself to sleep. They don't know how to sit in the silence of your depression. They don't understand why you're still grieving something that happened years ago. To them, it seems like you're too sensitive, too broken, too much. But that's only because they haven't sat in the fire that's refined you. They haven't carried what you've carried. And if they had, they wouldn't be able to offer you quick fixes. They would simply hold space. They would simply listen. They would simply stay. And that's why healing must start within. That's why growth must be private. That's why you can't keep expecting people to rescue you when they barely have the strength to hold themselves together. There's a certain kind of loneliness that comes with deep emotional and spiritual pain, a sacred isolation that teaches you to stop depending on others for your deliverance. God allows this kind of pruning for a reason. He allows you to be misunderstood, ignored, overlooked. Not because he's punishing you, because he's pulling you back into himself. Because only he can handle the fullness of your truth. Only he can sit with you in the midnight hour when your soul is unraveling. Only he knows the backstory behind your breakdown, silent suffering behind your smile, the burden behind your strength. People think they want to help until they realize help requires presence, time, spiritual endurance. Most are willing to say a prayer, but not to stay through the storm. Most are willing to give advice, but not to walk beside you. Most are willing to repost quotes about healing, but not to witness the messiness of the process. They don't want to sit in your ashes. They want to see your resurrection, but they don't want to go through your crucifixion. So what do you do when you realize your pain is too much for the people you love? You stop bleeding out for those who can't help you heal. You stop handing over sacred parts of yourself to people who only come close when it's convenient. You stop expecting depth from shallow places. Maturity says, I don't need to be understood to be whole. Maturity says, I will not use vulnerability as a currency to buy closeness. Maturity says, I will process privately what cannot be carried communally. Maturity says, I choose wisdom over emotional exposure. And maturity hurts. It hurts to realize that the ones you trusted can't carry you in the way you hoped. It hurts to bite your tongue when your soul is screaming to be heard. It hurts to walk past people you love knowing they will never know the real weight you bear. But it also heals. It heals you to reclaim your power. It heals you to choose boundaries over begging. It heals you to finally take your pain to the one who is not intimidated by it. When God becomes your primary confidant, your soul stops collapsing every time a human fails you. When the Holy Spirit becomes your counselor, your need for constant validation disappears. When Jesus becomes your comforter, your healing becomes unstoppable. So the next time you feel the urge to vent to someone, to explain yourself one more time, to spill your heart into hands not made to hold it, pause. Ask yourself, is this person capable of carrying what I'm about to share? And if not, turn inward, turn upward. Let silence be your strength. Prayer be your processing. Let your tears be seen by the one who counts every single one of them. There's a sacred kind of silence that surrounds those who are being prepared for something greater. It doesn't always feel holy at first. In fact, it often feels like abandonment, like being forgotten, like everyone has moved on while you're stuck in a place of stillness you never asked for. But what the flesh interprets as rejection, the spirit begins to recognize as a divine repositioning. There are moments in life when God will pull you away from the crowd, away from distractions, away from voices that used to influence you, place you in what feels like obscurity. The invitations stop, the conversations dry up, the phone that used to constantly buzz with attention goes silent. Friends fade, routines shift, and suddenly you find yourself surrounded by nothing but quiet. And in that quiet, the ache of loneliness begins to rise. If you stay there long enough, if you don't run from it, if you don't distract yourself out of it, you begin to realize something. This is not a punishment. It is not exile. It is not cruelty. It is not even a delay. This is a divine cocoon, a spiritual holding place, sacred space where the noise dies so the voice of God can rise. See, the world will tell you to stay busy, to always be producing, performing, posting, proving. Heaven has a different rhythm, a slower, deeper, more intentional rhythm. When God begins to do a deeper work in you, he often starts by calling you away from what is familiar, comfortable, and noisy. He leads you into a wilderness, not to starve you, to feed you something deeper, not to break you down, but to build you up in secret. We fear isolation because we associate it with emptiness. Divine isolation is anything but empty. It's full of lessons, full of light, full of transformation. God fills those quiet seasons with refinement. He begins pulling things out of you, old habits, unhealthy mindsets, toxic attachments, and replacing them with strength, peace, and clarity. When you're surrounded by people, it's easy to fake wholeness. It's easy to wear a smile and pretend you're healed. It's easy to hide behind noise. But in isolation, there's no one to perform for. There's no mask that can stay on. There's only truth, and that truth becomes the foundation for something real. The prophets knew this. Jesus knew this. Every great figure ever used by God in Scripture spent time in divine isolation. Moses had the wilderness. David had caves. Elijah had the mountain. Paul had the desert. Even Jesus himself was led into the wilderness before stepping fully into his public ministry. Not because they were being punished, because they were being prepared. There are some that can't be developed in public. Some wisdom that cannot be gained through conversation alone. Some strength that only grows in the dark. God uses isolation to strip you down to what's essential, to remove the need for applause, to refine your character, to strengthen your faith, to turn your dependence fully toward Him. Because when there's no one else to turn to, you discover who God really is, not just as a concept, but as a presence. You begin to understand that peace isn't found in people, it's found in the presence of God. That joy isn't in validation, it's in alignment. Care enough, that purpose isn't born in crowds, it's forged in consecration. The divine uses isolation as a sacred tool, not to depress you, but to develop you. But the enemy wants a perspective of this season. He wants you to see isolation as evidence that you're unwanted, unloved, and unworthy. And care enough, he wants to convince you that your quiet season is a punishment, a delay, a waste of time. Care enough, because if you ever realized the truth about this season, if you ever discovered how much God is doing in the silence, you stop running from it. You'd enough and care enough. You'd embrace it. You'd lean into it. You'd find power in your stillness. Care enough. That's why it's so important to protect your perspective while you're in isolation. Don't let your feelings lie to you, and care enough. Don't let the temporary absence of people make you question the eternal presence of God. Just because it's quiet doesn't mean He's gone. Just because it's hidden doesn't mean it's over. Just because no one sees it doesn't mean nothing is happening. You are being rebuilt from the inside out. And care enough, every moment spent in the quiet is shaping the next version of you. The stronger you, the wiser you, the more discerning you. When the time comes to step back out, you won't be the same, won't tolerate what you once accepted. You won't shrink to fit into old places. You won't seek approval from people who never had the authority to define you. You stop needing to be understood. You stop needing to explain your growth. You stop needing permission to evolve. You learned how to be whole in silence, how to be powerful in private, how to stand even when no one is clapping. Care enough. When your roots grow deep in secret, your fruit will be undeniable in public. When your strength is built in the shadows, and care enough, your light will not be dimmed by the opinions of people. When you learn to hear God in isolation, you'll never be confused by the noise again. Care enough. So if you're in that season where friends are distant, where doors are closing, where you're surrounded by silence, don't panic. Don't fight it. Don't beg for company. Breathe. Be still. Lean in. There's a kind of healing that can't happen in the spotlight, a kind of restoration that refuses to be rushed, timed, or performed for others, the deepest healing, the kind that rewires your soul, stitches together the unseen wounds, and makes you whole again. Doesn't happen on stages or social media timelines. It happens in the quiet, in the stillness, in moments no one claps for. Too often we treat healing like a performance, like it needs to be broadcasted to be believed. And that we want people to see our progress, to validate our strength, to say, you're doing so well, even while we're still bleeding under the bandages. Care enough. We've been conditioned to think healing is supposed to be visible, linear, and neatly wrapped with hashtags and inspirational captions. Care enough. But true healing isn't pretty. It's raw, messy, inconsistent. Some days you're better, some days you're broken all over again. Some days you can smile enough, and some days the tears hit you out of nowhere, without warning, without explanation. Healing is not a performance for public consumption. It is a sacred enough, personal process, tailor-made for your soul. It's not for others to measure. It's not for them to judge how fast or how slow it's taking. Love and care enough. It's not for them to approve how you're doing it. Healing doesn't answer to opinions, doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to truth, and truth can't always be neatly expressed in words, posts, or updates. Care enough. There are some wounds people will never understand because they didn't cause them, and they didn't have to carry the weight of the consequences. Care enough. People will say things like, you should be over it by now, or why are you still struggling with that? But they weren't there when your heart broke. And care enough. They didn't sit in the hospital room. They didn't cry on the bathroom floor. They didn't live through the betrayal, the abandonment, the trauma, or the silence that followed. They don't know the full story, and they never will, because healing isn't about them. It's about you. Enough. You're the one who has to wake up every day and face yourself. You're the one who has to confront the triggers, walk through the memories. Care enough. I rewrite the narratives in your mind and slowly learn how to live again. That's not something can be shared with just anyone. That's not something the world deserves to comment on. Some things are between you and God, between you and your process. Care enough, between you and the version of yourself you're fighting to become. Don't let the pressure to look, heal, force you pretend. Don't slap a smile on your face because people are uncomfortable with your pain. Don't fake progress to meet expectations. And care enough. You owe yourself authenticity more than you owe anyone else comfort. You don't have to prove that you're okay. You don't have to prove that you're strong. Sometimes real strength looks like falling apart and still choosing to get back up. Sometimes healing means letting yourself feel everything fully enough, not suppressing it to protect other people's peace. And while the world might prefer a curated version of your healing, God is not afraid of the mess. Care enough, he does his best work in the raw, unfiltered places. He steps into the cause of your soul, sits with you in the silence enough, and whispers truth into the deepest corners of your pain. His healing isn't for display. It's for transformation. It's for restoration. It's for freedom. Care enough. And often it happens away from the crowd, just like the miracles of old, where Jesus would take people aside, away from the noise, away from the judgment, and care enough and do some holy in private. Some of the most sacred moments in your healing journey will happen in isolation, in prayer, in tears that no one sees. Care enough, in nights where you finally release what you've been holding on to for years, in mornings where you wake up and realize, for the first time in a long time, and care enough that your heart feels a little lighter, that you're breathing a little easier, that the weight isn't crushing you anymore. No one may notice that shift. And care enough. No one may clap for your internal breakthrough, but you will know, you will feel the difference. Care enough. You will begin to recognize yourself again. Not the broken version molded by pain, but the resilient version forged through the fire. And care enough. And you'll realize that not sharing every step of your healing doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means it was too sacred to explain. And care enough, people can witness your glow, but they don't have to understand your growth. They can admire your peace without knowing what it cost you. Care enough. And when you heal privately, your transformation becomes unshakable because it wasn't built on applause, it was built on surrender. And care enough. It wasn't validated by comments, it was validated by the Spirit. So give yourself permission to heal at your own pace, in your own way, without pressure. Care enough, without performance. Trust the quiet work happening inside you. Trust that just because no one sees the roots growing doesn't mean they aren't enough. Just because the flower hasn't bloomed publicly yet doesn't mean life isn't sprouting underneath the soil. You're not behind. You're not failing. Care enough. You're not weak because you're still healing. You're human. You're honest. And you're brave enough to walk through it without performing for the crowd. Let them guess. Let them assume. You don't owe anyone a presentation of your process. You don't need a stage to validate your scars. Your healing is personal. Your healing is real. And that, even when done in the quiet, is more than enough. Care enough. There comes a point in your life where growth demands that you speak less and observe more. Not out of fear, pride, but out of wisdom. And care enough. There's a maturity that whispers to your soul, everything doesn't need to be said, and not everyone needs to know what's going on inside of you. You begin to realize that peace isn't always found in expression. Sometimes it's protected through discretion. And in that revelation, you learn the sacred power of discernment over disclosure. It's tempting to think that openness is always virtuous, that vulnerability equals connection. The world will often encourage you to be transparent, to speak your truth, to let it all out. But not every ear deserves access to your story. Care enough. Not every listener has the capacity to hold what you're carrying. Not every environment is safe enough to cradle the fragile pieces of your becoming. Some things were never meant to be exposed, only entrusted. And trust must be earned, not assumed. You may feel the urge to vent when your heart is heavy. Care enough. You may long to be seen, heard, understood. That's human. But there's a line between expression and exposure. And care, there's a difference between sharing and spilling to be rescued. When your soul is vulnerable, your discernment must be sharp, because the wrong listener can delay your healing. The wrong environment can distort your truth. Care enough. The wrong response can send you back into a shell that took you years to grow out of. So you learn and care enough. You learn that wisdom isn't just knowing what to say, it's knowing when to stay silent. You learn that not every person who listens loves you, and not every person who asks is truly concerned. Some people are curious, not compassionate. Some people are spectators, not supporters. They want your details, Karam, not your deliverance. They're fascinated by your wounds, but incapable of helping you heal. And if you aren't discerning, care enough, you'll confuse their interest with intimacy and give them access they were never meant to have. There's a weight that comes with self-awareness. Care enough. The more you grow, the more intentional you become with your words. You stop broadcasting your battles to people who haven't earned a seat in your war room. Care enough. You stop explaining yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop handing over your insights to those who only want to debate your truth. Because you understand now your story is sacred, your healing is holy, and your journey is too costly to be handled carelessly. Some revelations are meant for private reflection, not public release. Some dreams are meant to be nurtured in silence, not shared prematurely. Care enough, not because you're high, because you're ashamed, but because premature disclosure can sabotage divine timing. Enough. What you speak too soon can become vulnerable to voices that weren't meant to shape it. Even Jesus understood this. When he healed, when he taught, care enough. When he revealed truth, it wasn't always in the crowd. Sometimes it was in the quiet. With a few, care enough with those who could carry the weight of what he was unveiling. There is a divine model of discernment woven into every great leader, prophet, and visionary. And care enough. They knew how to read a room. They knew when to speak and when to be silent. They knew how to guard the holy with holy boundaries. Care enough, because we are carrying something divine, a vision, a healing, a revelation. You must treat it like a seed. You don't expose a seed to every hand that reaches for it. You plant it, protect it, water it. Let it grow in darkness before it's ever seen in light. Discernment is the spiritual fence that keeps your soul from being trampled. If you share your heart with everyone, you will become scattered. You'll be torn in a dozen emotional directions, left trying to manage perceptions, reactions, and misinterpretations. You'll start performing vulnerability instead of practicing authenticity. But when you choose discernment, you stop trying to be understood and start striving to be aligned. You no longer need everyone to get you. Care enough. You just need to stay connected to the one who guides you. There's power in keeping some things between you and God. There's strength in quiet transformation. Care enough. There's beauty in becoming without broadcasting. Every part of you is not a public domain. Every wound doesn't need a witness. And care enough, every truth doesn't need a mic. Yes, there are safe people in sacred spaces that deserve your honesty. Care enough. But the difference between chaos and clarity is knowing the difference between expression and exposure. It's knowing when your soul is whispering, wait, enough. This is not the place. This is not the person. This is not the time. Discernment is the spiritual filter that keeps your life from being diluted by unnecessary drama. It tells you when to walk away from the conversation, when to stop replying, when to take your burdens to your journal instead of a person. And care enough, when to pray instead of posting, when to seek God before seeking advice. When you operate in discernment, you don't move in fear, you move in wisdom. Care enough. You don't isolate, you don't insulate. You protect what God is doing inside of you so that there's space to flourish without distortion. Because some things can only grow in silence. Some parts of you can only heal in solitude. And some breakthroughs are too holy to be handled by human hands. Care enough. You don't owe everyone an explanation. You don't owe the world your wounds. You don't have to be loud to be valid. Care enough. Some of your strongest seasons will be the quiet ones. The ones where no one knows what you're working on, what you're walking through. I love enough and care enough, or how hard you're fighting to stay grounded. And that's okay. You're not invisible. You're just being divinely covered. Care enough. There's something powerful about a person who moves in silence. A person who doesn't need to announce their every step, defend every decision, or explain every season. A person who understands that when God is doing something sacred in their life, it's not for conversation, it's for personal transformation. We live in a loud where everyone's talking, posting, declaring, proving, and care enough. There's a constant pressure to show what you're doing, share what you're planning, and validate your progress through visibility. Some of the most significant moves God will make in your life will happen in silence, in stillness, in secrecy. There are some things that are too precious to reveal before they're ready. Some promises too holy to be exposed to unholy opinions. Some breakthroughs too personal to be broadcast. And if you're wise, you'll learn the art of moving in silence. Not because you're hiding care enough, but because you're honoring the process. When you move in silence, you're not seeking applause. You're walking in alignment. Care enough. You're not trying to be impressive. You're being obedient. You're not trying to be seen. You're trying to stay faithful. You're not rushing to reveal. You're waiting on God's timing to unveil. Enough. Because there's a difference between you revealing yourself and God revealing you. When you try to reveal yourself, you'll often end up misunderstood, care enough, misjudged, or prematurely exposed to warfare you're not ready for. But when God reveals you, there is no confusion. No one can deny the fruit. No one can block the door. No one can dim the light He has ignited in you. Look at how God operates throughout Scripture. Enough. He anointed David king while he was still a shepherd, but didn't place him on the throne immediately. And care enough. He gave Joseph dreams of greatness, but allowed him to be thrown into pits and prisons before revealing the promise. Even Jesus spent 30 years in silence before stepping into 3 years of public ministry. See, God will often keep you hidden while He works on your character, while He deepens your roots, while He strengthens your discernment, while He detoxes your heart from people-pleasing, insecurity, and the need for external validation. Care enough. He'll silence the noise around you so that you learn to recognize His voice above all others. Care enough, because when the time comes for you to step into the place He's prepared for you, your foundation needs to be strong enough to handle the weight of it. Some people will question you. Care enough. Why are you so quiet lately? Why don't you post about your life anymore? Why didn't you tell me about that opportunity? But you learn that peace doesn't require public explanation. Enough. That the deeper the transformation, the fewer words you have for it. And care enough. You stop sharing everything because you understand that not every update is a blessing when it's spoken too soon. People can't sabotage what they don't see. Care enough. They can't criticize what they don't know. They can't attach their insecurity to what hasn't been revealed. Care enough. There's power in letting God cover you while He cultivates you. And let me be clear. Moving in silence doesn't mean you're passive. And care enough. It doesn't mean you're doing nothing. It means you're actively working behind the scenes. You're building, growing, healing. Care enough. Learning without the need to prove anything to anyone. You're letting your work speak for itself. You're letting your